have a very important guest and have to travel between cities. So let's try to cope with that. And also another thing is that I have a lot of things to say about this topic, conversion optimization. So we will not have time to go through all of the slides, but let's make the best of the time we have, and I'll try to be as informative as possible. And for whatever slides and information we don't have time for, then you can review it in afterwards. So I'll share the slides as usual. Okay, so I'm now sharing my screen and going into the presentation. So indeed, today's topic is conversion optimization, and let's get here. All right, let's get started. So conversion optimization, first of all, what is optimization? So optimization is something, it's continuous improvement process of something. Often in the case of conversion optimization, we want to optimize the conversion rate of a website. So there is some kind of goal for some action that we want people to take, and we want to increase that rate of people taking that action. The background is that that action they will take is somehow financially beneficial for us. So it's tied to business performance. Yeah, so conversion optimization is a type of optimization, and optimization deals with improving something over time. So we often talk about CRO, so conversion rate optimization. So indeed, it's computed as the number of visitors that complete an action that we wanted for them to do, usually a purchase, but it doesn't have to be a purchase always. It can be some other form of action. For example, collecting a leads, we often consider in business to business to be a type of a conversion. So out of total visitors, how many people complete the action will be the conversion rate. And it's important to acknowledge that basically everything, it's not only about improving the website per se, but it's about improving the conversion rate deals with basically all the marketing variables. So if you think of the 4P model, for example, the product, price, place, and promotion. So it's also these factors. And sometimes you can see in when people talk about conversion optimization, they have a very narrow view. So they only think about the website. So they might think about the usability or user experience of the website. And they might ignore the fact that in fact we might also think about, okay, how do we get better products? How should we change the pricing? Should we change the distribution or the channel selections where we sell our products, and promotion? How can we, through advertising, make sure that we are getting visitors that come with the right intent and willingness and readiness to convert, basically. So this is broader than just website changes. Of course, changing the website is a major part of what is perceived as conversion optimization traditionally. So we'll talk about that today, but I want you to kind of internalize this mentality that it's a broader thing. We want to basically anything we can do to drive conversions is possible. So we are not necessarily, we don't need to restrain our thinking or be, put into this narrow box that, okay, it's only about the website. It can be about anything, so we can think out of the box when it comes to improving conversions. And I included here a few people to follow. So if you are interested in conversion optimization, if you're interested in learning more after this lecture and course, here are some people to follow in LinkedIn. So this Pete Playa is founder of Conversion Excel, which was and I'm not sure if still is, but at least previously when he was actively working on it, was the #1 conversion optimization blog. So there's tons and tons of content on his website about conversion optimization. Then Paras Chopra is the founder of Visual Website Optimizer. So Visual Website Optimizer is one of these tools that you can install on the website, and then marketers can make some they can basically run their own A/B tests. It has some limitations, of course, the tool, but it allows for changing texts and so on. Let's say basic changes. You can create different versions and run an A/B test and get the reports through this Visual Website Optimizer. So he's the founder of that company, and then Chris Stuccio is a data scientist who's very intimately familiar with the theory of A/B testing and also more advanced methods like multi-armed bandit, which we are not going into because they are more advanced topics. Maybe we'll talk about those in the AI and ML course, but here we will not talk about those. But he's a good person to follow to understand more about the theory of A/B testing. Okay, and then another thing here which I want you to take away is that in many situations we are often thinking about the algorithm nowadays, but conversion optimization is a very special case where we have to think about the person, the psychology of the person, and also not only about the, let's say, the drives and the motives, so behavioral psychology, but also about cognitive psychology, how they process information, how they process websites, what kind of expectations they have. So really here also repeats the pattern that you can recall when we were talking about Google. We said that, okay, we don't want to optimize for the algorithm, but we want to optimize for the user, and that will be consistent with how the algorithm thinks, or let's say places weights on different things. And the same was in the case of social media. So for example, Facebook algorithm follows engagement rate, so engaging content performs better, so we should try to create something that appeals to people. So conversion optimization is the same. We want to optimize for better user experience. That's a major part of it, because then it will make things easier for the users, and we are more likely to get the outcome that we want. Okay, and then sort of an extension of what I was saying previously, in that it's not only about the website improvement. So we can think of this funnel in a way for conversion optimization, and we can think of the before click and after click actions that people take, right? So these are all things that we can affect. So before the click, we can do better targeting with our advertising. We can be more informative. We can try to find people with the right intent, again, through targeting, and we can improve our marketing variables there, like copy texts and pictures and so on. So there are a bunch of things we can do for conversion optimization already in the advertising platform. And of course, that includes setting relevant landing pages. So when people land on the website, they are more likely to take action because they have to do fewer clicks, and they are immediately finding thing that they were looking for. So, you know, these are two are not completely isolated, but then you do have this after click area, which is usually the website. So here are the things that we can do to improve usability and user experience of um, of the visitors in order to drive more conversion. And also all the other things I was talking about, the 4P, you know, the product, price, and factors like that. You can think really how to improve the customer service and so on and so on. But it's not only, again, about, you know, the layout of the website or the colors and stuff like that. Those things for sure matter, but they are not the only toolbox for conversion optimization. Again, I'm mentioning this because many blogs and many sources view conversion optimization a little bit narrowly. So if you start learning more about it, be careful not to get boxed into this mentality that it's only about improving the basket, for example. Many marketers think that, you know, conversion rate is about improving the basket, the shopping basket on the e-commerce website and making that very easy. So that's a very, very limited and narrow sort of conception of what actually drives people's actions, right? Because people are taking the actions based on a multiple factors, not just how easy it is to use the shopping cart. So because that's the case, we should also think about the whole picture. So conversion optimization is not only about the traffic side or the advertising side or about the website side, but it's about both. And that's why it's demanding sort of and requires a very broad mindset. And then as sort of an extension of this model also after conversion, so typically something like around 1% of people convert. So that means if you are, for example, getting advertising clicks, 99 of those are not leading to immediate conversion. So only 1 out of 100 people will perhaps make the purchase sort of immediately. So this is quite typical. You have a huge dropout rate. So for those 99% that don't do, we need to understand why didn't they convert? Are there some problems, or is it, you know, this bad quality traffic, or is it our offering that's not working? Are there some issues? Yeah, trying to basically do some user research and understanding. But often in advertising, we treat those audiences as retargeting audiences, and then we continue advertising to them and continue trying to get them actually back to the website to purchase. And you can also try to so through marketing automation, you could try to get information about them and then include them into lead nurturing campaigns and so on. But there you already require something like their email, for example, to then try to encourage them toward completing the purchase, typically over time. So that audience is the big one, much bigger than the ones who convert. But because the conversion is such a rare event, we also want to think about the after conversion, and we want to create a relationship, and we want to obtain repeated purchases and loyalty over time. So I wanted to mention it also because often conversion optimization and digital marketing really focus on these, you know, before and after click and conversion or not, but too rarely we think about the customer loyalty and increasing the customer lifetime value over time, because it is possible that the person only purchases one time and cannot establish a proper relationship to them, and in that case it is, you know, a big problem, because this is such a rare event that can obtain a person as, let's say, a lifelong as a lifelong customer, that would be much better than just having one-time purchase. So this is the whole sort of big picture that we should think about when we are thinking optimizing for conversions, not only now but also in the future. Yeah, so here are some of the actions we can think about before the click. So as I mentioned, advertising is a key role there, but also the other subfields of digital marketing can affect that. Basically, we want to drive more traffic to the website, traffic that is interested in the offering. So these tools like SEO and social media naturally support that goal of us finding the people who care about our offering. And yeah, after the click, it's about asking people to perform something, some action, uh, removing any bottlenecks that are on the website regarding navigability, things like delivery and payment options. And then yeah, shopping cart is the classic example of trying to make it very easy and effortless to complete the purchase. And I mentioned also the fact that because not all people are immediately purchasing, we might try to provide them additional value and lead them toward conversion path. So especially in B2B, we want to generate some kind of lead magnets that encourage people to leave their contact details, and then we can later be in touch with them through marketing automation or through manual sales force. And there's an interesting aspect or dynamics in digital marketing teams when it comes to this pre and post click behaviors, namely that when a performance is sort of low, then you might have this kind of blame game happening where, you know, the traffic people, the people who are in charge of traffic are saying that the website quality is bad or the offering is bad, like the product is bad. So that's why people are not converting, but we are driving good traffic and a lot of traffic, but you should fix the website and you should fix the product so that people actually want to buy. So that is the traffic people's explanation. And then the marketing people or the people in charge of the product would say the opposite. They would say that, okay, you are not giving us high quality traffic, that all the visitors there, you should do better job of finding the people who actually want it. There's nothing wrong with the website and the products, but you are not just finding the people that want to buy, and you're not telling about us in the correct way, and that's why it's not working. See, so there can be this kind of dynamic that you observe when you go into organizations. So that's a side effect of kind of this siloing, that you have different teams that focus on different things instead of having this, you know, this kind of a team that is in charge of the whole thing. So holistic marketing would be better. You have people that have the authority and responsibility over the whole this funnel diagram, then those people cannot shift the blame, because, you know, they're in charge of not only this part of or that part, but the whole process. So this is also something to keep in mind when developing teams that run digital marketing, and how to make them as frictionless as possible. And then I mentioned that conversion rates tend to be low, around 1%. So there is some variability. There are different sort of reports that mention slightly varying conversion rates, but in general they tend to be low. So even in industries that have relatively high conversion rates, it's still around 4% the highest. So indeed, this it makes this makes this kind of shows that it's conversion is a rare event. Sometimes you see cases where they claim extremely high conversion. So this might be a business that's only selling one product and they are very, very niche and they do sort of small scale marketing. So if you do very small scale and very targeted marketing, you might have, let's say, exceptionally high conversion rate, higher than 10%. But if you run like, a business that is selling multiple products and an e-commerce store, then it is much harder to make high conversion rate to scale with the bigger audience. But this kind of conversion rates are sort of good to know if you're in a specific industry, what is the average conversion rate, just so that you could benchmark that, okay, our conversion rate is 2.5, so is it good? And then, okay, we are in B2B SaaS business, so based on this information, it looks like we are much higher than the average. So actually, we are doing pretty well on conversion. Or if we are lower, than the average, then we can say that, okay, it seems like conversion is something we really should put effort into, because you can not also make super miracles with the conversion rate, cannot magically bring it to something like 20%. It's not possible. So it's good to know a little bit the boundaries of what is like a realistic conversion rate in your industry. And because conversion is such a rare event, marketers are also measuring other actions than the final action that they want. So if they want the purchase, they might know that some milestones are needed before that, and then they might consider those as micro conversions that are leading towards the final conversion of macro conversion. So one reasoning here is that you have more of such events, so you are able to produce more data. So for example, in Facebook advertising, some people use the trick that they don't set the purchase as the optimization goal of the campaign, but they set add to cart event as the optimization goal, because there will be many more add to cart events than completed purchases. So they are able to collect sort of data for optimizing the campaigns faster this way. But this can be sort of arbitrary, which means that you can define what are your micro conversions toward the final conversion. Again, this might differ by industry and by company, and it can include things like setting up. Here are some examples, like someone visiting a blog, that could be considered micro conversion. Someone subscribing to email, and following on social media, attending a webinar. Especially in business to business, the purchase cycle can be very long. Not always. Sometimes people have the immediate need to buy something, and they just need the phone number. Okay, take my money type of thing. But those are not always the case. Sometimes you need, this lead nurturing, and it's a lot. It can be, actually many months before the company decides to buy a thing. So through that, of course, requires activity, and we cannot just focus on, okay, buy. We need to do this lead nurturing and produce content and produce information about our offering and so on. So this lead qualification, also SQL, and then eventually, hopefully, it will result in the conversion. So this is evolved in, for example, Google Analytics 4. They have separate event types. So they have conversions that are these business events like purchases, for example, and then key events that could be something like email subscription, for example. So basically, all conversions are key events, but not all key events are conversions. This is how it can be sort of set up, these micro conversions, as key events in Google Analytics tracking, for example. It might be more challenging than to do tracking between different platforms, uh, like when you change to social media and so on, because you might not be able to follow and track all of these if you're using a tool like Google Analytics for your conversion tracking. So there can be a lot of blind spots, but this is related to what we discussed last week with the challenges of analytics in general. And we have top of the funnel, top of the funnel and bottom of the funnel ideas. So top of the funnel means basically this traffic driving, and bottom of the funnel means closer to conversion. So we would look at different metrics when we want to improve each part of the funnel. So we would, for example, look at advertising visibility metrics if we are seeing the top of the funnel as an issue, and then conversion rate and average basket, which means average order value, if we are seeing the bottom of the funnel. So again, in let's say balanced conversion optimization, you are focused on multiple metrics. You need to, because you need to understand or monitor their role in the overall process. So once you do something at the top of the funnel, it will affect the bottom of the funnel, and vice versa. So they are not isolated in nature. They're just isolated conceptually in our minds, but everything is sort of connected. And the challenging thing, especially in markets or digital marketing settings that rely on search traffic as the main source for conversion, is that there's always only a limited number of people that are wanting to buy a given product at the same time, right? So if there's not enough natural demand at a given time, then we are not able to make conversions. So of course this is a problem only when we have very small markets. But in countries like Finland, in specific cities and locations, the markets are small. So there's only so and so many people looking for a haircut in a small town in Finland countryside, right? So we cannot drive more conversion than what is the natural demand. So there are really that's why it's usually, if you want to force and push more than the natural demand is, then your conversion rate will decrease, because you will get more traffic, but that traffic is not qualified to purchase at that given time. This is less of a problem in big countries and cities like New York. You have critical mass for all types of services. So that's why the economic activity there flourishes much better than in smaller regions. But yeah, this is just something to consider when we are trying to go for the best possible conversion rate. There's always some natural limit to the demand. And yeah, there's one useful tool called Hotjar. So this is an example for trying to detect bottlenecks by analyzing user behavior. So actually this tool can be installed in similar way to Google Analytics, and it records how people use the website, and you can play a recording that shows how the mouse moves over time in a given user session. So watching these recordings can give you interesting insights into how people actually use the website, and through their mouse movements, you can sometimes see that, oh, they didn't see something that they were supposed to click, or that you thought was very prominent, or then they might be, confused in some way, or things like this. You can learn from the behavior by just observing the mouse movement during a session. So there are ways to measure sort of the quality of traffic, to try to understand and diagnose if what is the reason for the current conversion rate. So we mentioned this bounce rate previously. So it means if you have a high bounce rate, people will generally leave immediately after landing on the website, so they will not click further. So if 9 out of 10 people leave after landing without clicking to the next page, then your bounce is 90%, which would be super high. You can compare different traffic channels, for example, by bounce, and you can usually observe that Google traffic has a relatively low bounce rate, so below 40%. If you have higher than 40% bounce, I would say that's quite high, because then more than half will just leave without clicking further. But often in display advertising, you have such high bounce rates, even up to 80 and 90. So it really shows you that traffic quality can be an issue. So the same with session duration. You can monitor how long people spend on the website, and these things, and specific pages. So specific pages where you drive the traffic and where you expect them to be, you can compare the time on those pages to try and understand what is happening. So and then cart abandonment rate, meaning that when people are putting something in the shopping cart, how many of them will complete the purchase. So this is often considered one of the key metrics in conversion rate optimization. But again, I want to stress that a lot of things happen before that. All the real variables of decision making, well, not all, but most of them happen. When people add something in the shopping cart, then they have already processed a lot of information. They have already made a lot of determination, and often this is sort of just a testing behavior where they test that, okay, what is the final price? Because then in the shopping cart, they can see all the expenses, and then they can still, deliberate on the purchase. But yeah, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be important to try to influence them at that given time. It's just that at that point they have already made a lot of reflection, and it's much broader therefore than just focusing on shopping cart. And yeah, this kind of analysis also, if you have some information about different segments, for example, if a gender plays a role or age plays a role in your offering, then trying to break down the metrics by those variables can produce more useful information, right? Because maybe the average conversion rate will be 1%, but among female buyers, it's 2%. So then, that means that if you have 50-50 traffic, then the male conversion rate is only 0.5%. Or, hold on, calculating a bit wrong. One female could be 1.5, male could be 0.5, and then the average would be 1. But anyway, you get the point. So the average per se doesn't tell you about the specific difference between the segments, because the segments can vary by conversion rate, traffic channels can vary by conversion rate, and then therefore, if you are able to break down this information by channels and segments, you have more information to make marketing decisions that then affect the overall conversion rate in a positive way. And then we have this idea of multiplication, which is, I think, a good way of understanding the benefits of conversion rate optimization, or basically the relationship between conversion rate and the visitors, right? So it's an interesting thought idea that to double the revenue, you could double the number of unique visitors. So here you assume that the conversion rate remains constant, but basically it means that instead of paying 1,000 euro, you now pay 2,000 euro for the traffic, and then you expect the revenue to double. But the sort of the beautiful idea of conversion rate is that if you double the conversion rate, you can double the revenue as without doubling your costs of driving the traffic, right? So that's the idea, that this conversion rate plays a very big role, because through that we don't always have to just keep on investing more and more into advertising and other traffic driving actions, but we can achieve the same or better results with actually less visitors. And we can expand on this idea by looking at some of the relevant e-commerce metrics. So we have visitors, conversion rate, average basket. So this again is a common metric that we are monitoring in e-commerce. So it means the average purchase value someone buys for 100 euro, 150, and then the company's margin, right? So that affects the profitability, and that can also vary by products and product categories. Some have very high margin, some have very low margin. So again, if we look at the overall equation, so when we put this into sequence of numbers, we can see that if we double these, all of these, we would basically have always the same result. It's not shown here, but you can imagine it sort of. So these are all kind of variables when we talk about optimizing. So it's not only about conversion rate again, but it's also when we want to improve the outcomes, we want to look at all of the possible variables that we can adjust. So it includes number of visitors, it includes average basket, and so on. So that's why you see, average basket, we want to drive, we want to do upselling, cross-selling, recommending related products, this type of stuff. We want to negotiate better margins with suppliers, again, because it affects this, and yeah, so all this will yield some type of profit for us, and that is the big picture what we want to drive. We want to be more profitable, given all these factors. So roughly speaking, we can try to improve targeting, or we can drive more traffic, and those are some of the let's say traffic-based conversion optimization actions. One of the overall challenge here is always that, for example, here was in assumption that conversion rate stays the same when you double the traffic, but often that's not the case. Remember, there might be this, when you have good campaigns, those work because they are very effective at reaching the people who have the need for the product at a given moment. But if you want to just double the campaign size, it means often that it will now target also people that are not immediately ready to buy, and some of those will click, and you will have to pay the cost for them. So often what you observe is non-linear scaling of conversions. So very small campaigns might achieve very good results, but as you want to grow, and usually in business they want to grow, then your conversion rate is one of those unit metrics that will decrease, unfortunately. So if you observe this effect, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are doing anything wrong. It's just the dynamics of how um, how it works. When you have the total market that is ready to buy, you might reach the boundaries, or your campaigns don't often scale linear, but sometimes they do. Sometimes you can double and can observe that the conversion rate remains high. So it's not always the case that it decreases when you scale the campaign. So here is an example of halving the advertising costs. So it's basically what I was referring to, which is that we can spend more or less and achieve the same result depending on the conversion rate. So that's why conversion rate plays a big role, because it can help us basically be more efficient with our marketing budget. And yeah, that's why often, well, the conversion rate specialists say that first optimize your conversion rate with small audiences, and then start scaling up your spending. Because if you have a high baseline conversion rate, it means you are doing something well in terms of the product and the user experience. And now it makes sense for you to drive as much traffic as you can, because then you can do it more affordably and still get the better results than just driving a bunch of traffic, and the website and the offering is not in order. You end up wasting a lot of that money. So that's often the logic why they recommend doing conversion optimization before scaling marketing budgets. And there's another reasoning that conversion rate optimizers use, which is this cumulative interest logic. So this is the same thing as with investing, right? In finance, where you're getting gains, and then you get new gains, and those gains are going on top of the previous gains. So if you improve by 15% in this period, and then in the next period you got again improved by 15%, then you are improving over that improvement, which is already like 1.15 times now 1.515. So it will be more than that 30% that you would get if you just would sum up the improvements. So it's this interest to interest effect, or the cumulative interest effect, that applies here. So this is the logic that why you do a lot of why you do a lot of individual actions, and all of them improve a little bit. So then in aggregate over time, it makes sense to invest in conversion optimization, because the benefits are cumulative. One challenge here is that this example is quite optimistic, and often you might get zero results, that an optimization or change didn't actually improve the result, or it might actually decrease the performance. This is also very common case, because people might be used to your old website layout and the way you did things previously, and now you change something. The effect is actually the opposite, that the conversion rate goes down. Usually it just goes down for a while, and then it bounces back as people sort of get accustomed to the new design. But still, it's the same idea that you might also get negative effects with testing. And in many cases, tests are not successful. In many cases, tests fail. So we cannot automatically assume that if we do 10 improvements over time, all of them would actually increase the conversion rate. And but still the logic is that if we do a lot of small optimizations across the marketing variables that we have, including the website, and you do a lot of small improvements that you have at least a good idea that okay, this is an improvement because of reason X, and then you do a lot of those and they are quite tiny, then overall in aggregate we believe that it will yield good results, right? So that's the incremental benefit idea, that you don't always need to change the whole website or make very, very big changes. We could focus on these smaller improvements, and cumulatively they bring a lot of from. So this is one approach and one reason into why we should do conversion optimization. And here are some examples of online advertising. So this would be before the click or pre-click, what we can do basically in the online advertising platform. So we can monitor results, and often we stop or decrease the budgets of campaigns that have low conversion rates. Low conversion rate is generally correlated with the lead metrics that we look in online advertising. So as we discussed previously, ROAS is currently the king of the metrics, so return on ad spend. So low conversion rate would generally be correlated with ROAS. So if you look at ROAS or conversion rate, you get the same interpretation when you compare two campaigns. If you have a low conversion rate, you generally have low ROAS and vice versa. So for those campaigns that tend to perform poorly, we can stop or decrease their budgets. And again, those that perform well, we try to scale them up by increasing their budget if it's possible. It's not always possible, like I said, unfortunately. So sometimes we need to still try to work on the campaigns that have lower conversion rate to see what we can do if our overall goal is to grow and we cannot scale up the better campaigns, then we just have to try to improve the performance of the lower performing campaigns, or then we need to just keep creating new campaigns to try to get that growth happening. And then often, these platforms like Google Ads and Meta Ads have breakdown analysis, so you can have breakdown by device, breakdown by demographics, breakdown by various factors, so you could try to understand the conversion rate differences between different segments, as we discussed, so you can use the online ad tools for that. Often though, this type of analysis is kind of being diminished by the fact that the platforms are using themselves that type of analysis in the algorithm. So if they find some kind of differences there, they should be like automatically reflected in your campaign targeting, the lessons that they learn, but still it might be provide you with interesting information about who your ideal customer is based on higher conversion rate. So I suggest checking out the breakdown analysis on ad platforms. Overall, this criterion for quality or relevance that also those platforms tend to follow is that the landing page you use really matches with the user intent. So you're not promising anything that's not present in the landing page. This will be to your interest as well, because you might get, again, if you promise the free beer, you get high click-through rates and a lot of traffic, but then if you're not, that's not matching the reality, you don't have the free beer, your conversion rate will be zero and then traffic will be useless, but also your performance in the ad platform goes down, you have to pay more for that traffic because you're not really delivering what you're promising to the people. So always align the copy text very well with the landing page and with the actual offering that you are giving, so that you are managing the expectations of the users as well as possible. And yeah, there are many variables we can change when we observe inferior, or when we want to improve the conversion rate. So we can improve advertising components, so pictures, headlines, body texts. We can change the value propositions. You we talk about fast delivery. We can talk about broad selection and so on. So we should have always, as marketers, whatever case we are marketing, we need to have a short list of value propositions, right? That that company or brand has, that make them unique. So we need to have them in memorized, and then we can try to alternate them or change them and test them. Placements where the ad shows in the news feed or somewhere else, and targeting, yeah, and beats those. So there are a lot of things we can improve. And then I also wanted to mention that, yeah, indeed, conversion is not the end point. So this is a very common case, for example, with startups, that they observe this kind of valley of death in a way, where they have the signups, and even after the sign up, there is a huge loss of people. So after 30 days, you know, only a small, tiny minority remains. So this is the active user problem, and it's related to the loyalty problem, which I mentioned earlier, that okay, even if you get that conversion, that the person signs up, that's not your, that's not the end of your job as a marketer. You shouldn't be saying, okay, I did a really good job, but again, we need to look at what's happening after. So this is especially relevant for many software as a service or SaaS businesses, of which many are startups. So yeah, indeed, the conversion is not the main key, but the key there is the active user, and it's good to keep in mind. So this means that you really need to collaborate with product development and engineering to understand user behavior much more in depth, and you need to really consider the conversion actually as a starting point for your analysis of the user behavior, because you don't analyze why this drop takes place, then you're not able to drive sustainable growth, because this type of business model relies on active users, and if your churn is very high, then your business in the long run will not be viable. So it will cost a lot to drive even one registration, but then if you don't have that active user, then you will not gain back the cost of the customer acquisition. And yeah, I mentioned earlier about optimization, and this is actually a good way of thinking about digital marketing as a whole. And it's that digital marketing is really not about campaigns, but it's about this idea of continuous improvement, so optimization. And these, a lot of the ideas that you pick up from conversion optimization generalize to other domains. So, whether it's SEO or advertising, we're not really doing campaigns. The campaigns are always on. Our SEO is always on 24/7, right? So we need to adopt the mindset that we are improving that thing that's always on all the time. So this is drastically different from the traditional marketing way of thinking about campaigns. So traditional marketers think, what interesting promotion can we make? Back to school campaign, whatever, and then it runs for 30 days, and then they start thinking about, okay, what's our next campaign? What is our next thing to amaze? But for digital marketing, that those kind of campaigns, they are just one type of content. Um, so we still do, of course, this type of campaigns in digital marketing for sure, but those are often a lot less effective than the marketing people think. And actually, your campaigns that are on all the time will be more effective. So think about, something like in the gift business, for example, if I have a birthday campaign on, it's all year round because people are looking for birthday gifts all year round. So I don't need to have a birthday campaign for June because people have birthdays in July and August and September as well, right? So this campaign is always on. I need to make sure that that campaign gets better over time and it generates revenue. So this campaign thinking is more, uh, it's a way of thinking about finite things, that campaign has start and an end, but optimization has never an end. There's never a perfect birthday campaign. It's always, it can be, better. So it's infinite. So optimization is infinite. It never ends. Um, so it's very different from the campaign thinking. So I mean, this might seem somewhat, well, unclear why I'm talking about it, but I'm talking about it because the best digital marketers don't think about campaigns, but they think about processes and they think about optimization, and their time horizon is longer. They're not looking about what campaign can we do in the next 30 days. That's not what they're thinking. They're thinking about what is the yearly optimization, what they are looking at the big picture. They are so it is very, very different mentality. And it's also very different mentality when you're building a company, when you're recruiting and training people, when you're building the organization. If you are building it around campaigns or if you're building it around continuous optimization, you're likely to get very different results. So yeah, remember that digital marketing is about optimization, and optimization is infinite, and it's based on a process rather than just a campaign that's run one time and then sort of forgotten. Okay, then we have some examples of conversion optimization. I took this is a message I got in 2016. So as you know, uh, the presidential campaign was effective there for the Trump campaign. So they did a lot of things right, and they ended up securing the presidency. And there's a lot of attention going to the Cambridge Analytica and the targeting and that, and it's kind of like a little bit red herring because it focuses on the idea that people are kind of easily foolable, but actually people deliberate on their actions. So you have to give more credit to people than what is given. It's just some autonomous robots. Um, so a lot of the stuff that the campaign did was following just basic conversion optimization principles. So I would give credit to such actions rather than some magical micro targeting. So here, for example, you can see basic conversion optimization principles. There's personalization here. Everything is quite short. The short intro. You can see these links here. Strong link, strong link, strong call to action, strong highlighting, strong coloring, urgent creation of urgency. Again, personalization here, and then this kind of positive message. So visually and in terms of content, it's very good. It gives a purpose, that you are part of the community and help us, fight. It's kind of a rallying message. So this type of it's good job when it comes to conversion optimization. This type of messaging, you are likely to convert people, and that's what happened. So it's one of the good examples of the tactics that you can use. So conversion optimization kind of can be considered also, let's say it's approaching manipulation, right? So the same psychological triggers, the same cognitive triggers work regardless of what you are trying to activate people on, right? So we cannot say conversion optimization is good or bad in terms of ethics, but it's the purpose that determines that, right? So if you are using it to sell people something that's harmful to them, right? So that will be unethical. So in that case, you are using your tools of conversion optimization in a wrong way. But if you sell them something that makes them healthier, makes their life better, then you're using your tools of manipulation in a good way. So we cannot categorically say that something is good or bad when it comes to conversion optimization. Everything depends on the outcome and whether or not it's actually helping people. So yeah, a lot of the conversion optimization deals with landing pages. So if you look at the blogs and what is written about conversion optimization, a lot of it focuses on the design of an optimal landing page that converts really well. So here are some of the basic elements. So you have call to action. So it always means that you have to have always some, usually this big button that's clearly colored and distinct, that is easy to find and easy to click. So that's the idea of call to action. Testimonials are a type of word of mouth. So word of mouth again is very effective. So want to include the testimonials. You have certificates or logos, these trust indicators that make people trust the content and the website more. Then you have copy text. So copy text can be, often it's in bullet points and needs to be often quite short and quite compelling and using very basic words, so that's easy for people to read. You have different picture material to communicate about the product, about the company, creating some positive hero image that creates some positive association in people's minds. And then yeah, social media indicators about popularity, for example, can be included here. So yeah, there are some of these are like kind of like theoretical components of a good landing page. Often they are arranged in very predetermined manner. So for example, in e-commerce, you have sort of standard layouts. Everyone expects that the search is somewhere up, and often the products are on the left. And basically conventions are very important because people learn how to use different types of websites or user interfaces. And after they've learned a certain type, like for example, when you use the iPhone, you now are using the icons. But before icons, we had a totally different UI. We had a text-based UI, but which would be very difficult for many of you to use because, well, you would first have to learn it. So this is one of the key principles of user experience is learnability. And then if someone has learned to operate a user interface, they don't have to relearn it, so it will be cognitively less demanding for them to use that website. So that's why in general, in your industry, if you have this kind of conventions of how things are organized, always follow them, because then someone else has already trained the audience to follow this pattern. And in e-commerce, they have a lot of these conventions about where the shopping basket is placed and where the categories are and so on. So it's about landing pages and it's about category pages and product pages. And there's a good reason why the biggest e-commerce sites have specific layouts. They have tested them with a lot of people. So it is very good strategy to mimic and imitate the industry leaders, because they are, you can basically piggyback on the learning that they have done um, when it comes to UI. So in currently, I think this is well understood, but in the past there were some companies that put up, some radical designs that they said, oh, this is much more beautiful, but it went totally against this idea of following the conventions, and then those cases failed because again, should accommodate user behavior and not try to change. Otherwise, it's very easy to confuse people. So, and then social proof and this this is also uh, basically, so what did other people buy? What is the currently popular? These type of indicators and messages are sort of affecting people, because people, if you have a lot of reviews, if you have a lot of especially positive reviews, a lot of uh, indication that others have purchased this, we use it as a heuristic to think that, okay, others have already vetted, they have already gone through the comparisons, and they already have done that information processing, consideration and comparing different products. So we can just rely on this, and we don't have to go through all that cognitively demanding effort, and we will instead just buy the popular one because we know it's good, right? So this is again compatible with how humans behave, and yeah, so this a lot of the times engages with recommender systems and reviews to build to implement it, because recommenders often use these popular products are placed on the top logic. So yeah, it's a technical way to implement, and then the reviews are also making it easy for people to review, and also place higher the products that are uh, rated higher. So this social proof logic is sort of logical to build into e-commerce. And then trust seals. So we have a lot of again, people might have uncertainty and fear. So if you have references, especially for big purchases and especially for B2B, business to business transactions, references play a very big role. And if a big company has purchased from your company, then or if yeah, so then there might be some brand spillover effect that now you're associated. Okay, Amazon was trusted this company, so I can also trust it. And you can have also other type of trust signals that are technical about SSL certificate, privacy policies, and so on, that kind of can communicate this reliability. So yeah, I mentioned earlier that a lot of these techniques and tactics are can be viewed in a way as manipulation, because we understand what drives people's behaviors. We can manipulate the information purposefully to get them convert. And again, it depends on depends on our motive for that, if it's ethical or not to use these tactics. And then interactivity plays a big role in conversion optimization. So especially nowadays, we have the new service channels. So this WhatsApp commerce, for example, is major. So people can directly sell products there. So it's just about offering easier connection with the company, so you can make your orders directly in WhatsApp and engage with the service provider or a representative there. That it can also happen in automatic ways, so you can configure the WhatsApp business to build build a sequence there that people can then automatically follow to complete the transaction. So it can be manually provided service, or then it can be automated service. And yeah, the same with the chatbots also. There are chatbots that are running automatically, or that you have human live chat providers, and those are some things to test. So humans often still actually prefer talking to other humans. So in terms of conversion, it is preferable to use real humans instead of chatbots when you want to maximize the opportunities of conversion. For example, I would never buy a car from a chatbot, but I have bought a car from this type of live chat agent. Okay, and then I wanted to explain a couple of concepts because usability and user experience might be confusing, easy to confuse. So what does each of them mean? So usability is often associated with user interfaces. So for example, a website has a user interface. It has some options for people to click and information for them to view. So usability deals with making such user interfaces as easy to use as possible and as learnable as possible. So how quickly we can learn a new user interface. If we can learn it very quickly, it's easy to use. Of course, other aspects revolve here or are related here as well, to removing some accessibility issues and so on. But basically, it's about improving user interfaces. User experience, on the other hand, is a broader concept. So it deals with actually the attitudes or the perceptions of users when they use a website or a product. So it's more comprehensive than usability. Usability strictly relates to improving user interfaces, but user experience can be pretty much anything that improves how happy people are with a website. So they are distinct concepts, and you can see these both sort of used often in combination because they also have some kind of overlap. Usability is a component of user experience. So you can see job descriptions, UX/UI designer, for example, and those are sometimes used interchangeably, but now you know the difference. User experience is broader concept than usability is a narrower concept. And then often I see this, wanted to mention this because often I see this in student presentations when it comes to conversion optimization ideas. For example, students would say that let's make it easy to use, and then you ask, okay, but what do you mean by easy to use? And they cannot explain what it is. So I think these are good components. It's I got them from Claude, but I'm sure they are based on some broader principles as well. So this makes more specific the idea of easy to use, right? So simplicity, intuitiveness, efficiency, learnability, error tolerance, and accessibility. So if you read these definitions, you can understand better what actually easy to use means. So, and overall, it's about minimizing the cognitive load and making something as effortless as possible, which kind of, is what you mean when you say easy to use. But you're not able to articulate it because you haven't been thinking about it and like what is actually involved in creating easy to use products. So it's something that, some of these, the same thing as with high quality, you think that you have a clear conception of it, but then when someone asks you what is high quality, you might not be able to answer, or then your conceptualization of it is not capturing all the elements what high quality might entail. So that's why it's important that we define these concepts and try to clarify as much as possible instead of just kind of keeping a vague mental model of easy to use, for example, in our heads. And then another thing which I have observed with the students is that confusion between aesthetics and functionality. So this is something that has been studied a lot in human-computer interaction. That what is the interaction between beautiful, good-looking interfaces and usability. So predominantly functionality is a criterion for usability. So that it supports people's completion of a certain task, the interface and the product, they can complete what they want to do. So function relates to that, and that has a sort of strong correlation with the satisfaction for the system, because users are completing jobs. They are not viewing the website as a piece of art. So, well, in most cases, they want to get a job done. So functionality deals with supporting that user task. So for that, of course, we need to have an understanding of the user tasks and the jobs to be done. So there are different ways of sort of visualizing and understanding those in human-computer interaction and design communities. And aesthetics still matter. So but they matter like differently. They matter for the perception. So we have this idea in marketing, for example, brand image and trustworthiness. So these type of things are affected by what something looks like. But what I'm saying to you is that if you're involved with web design actions or conversion optimization, which definitely is associated with web design, do not only focus on the aesthetics, but try to understand the functionality, try to understand the user tasks, and try to model those using personas or jobs to be done or some other technique. And then test if your design, which is beautiful, also is functional. So it's best to have a functional design and then make it beautiful, perhaps then vice versa. So both of these can have problem. If we only focus on aesthetics, we might have user interfaces that are very cluttered. They might be very slow. They might have, slow to load. They might have a lot of images that play no role, that are distracting user from the task. Or then again, if they are very minimalistic, there's not enough information for the user to make decisions, complete actions, right? So often the best landing pages actually look quite busy, and still they work, because it's just that how the information is sectioned, how it's organized. It's organized in a way that can be digested easily. So it's not just one big line of text, but it's divided in subsections, bullet points, and so on. So there is actually some information there, and not just, you know, pretty pictures. So that's a risk if we just focus on aesthetics. But the same is that if we focus just on functionality, the user interface might look somewhat poor, and then, you know, the brand image and the trustworthiness aspects might suffer. So again, focus both on aesthetics and functionality, and then we will do better with the conversion user experience. If you're interested in learning some techniques related to conversion optimization, here are some technical. So JavaScript, remember we discussed JavaScript is a method for analytics to extract the information. So Google Analytics, for example, is implemented in JavaScript, but JavaScript also controls how websites look like. So it's a front end technology. So the button clicks and so on, those are implemented in JavaScript. So the behavior of the website is like manipulated through JavaScript. So this is a typical language for a front end developer. But yeah, if marketer knows this, it can be also very useful. Also, the conversion rate optimization tools like visual website optimizer are installed using JavaScript. And they also use JavaScript after being installed to divert the traffic, and also, well, actually to dynamically load the different content for different users, right? So the version A and version B is loaded. Actually the website is the same, but it's just showing a different version by replacing the content based on JavaScript technique. So yeah, this understanding that is useful. And CSS and HTML are basic tools that I have also used to manipulate websites. How CSS deals with the styling, so what the fonts look like and so on. So as a marketer, you might want to increase font size and stuff like that. You can do it using CSS. And then HTML deals with the structure of the website. So content is presented in JavaScript. Often in modern content management systems like WordPress, you have just the visual tool, but you have an option to also go into the code and change the HTML there. So if you know something about it, it can be useful. Like I sometimes edit some parts directly in the HTML because it might be faster than the visual interface. Okay, so copywriting is very important. Here is the idea of informative advertising. So I already mentioned this idea of aligning the user expectations with your actual offering. So this is techniques that can be used are using specific language and informative language. And this is a recommendation from this marketing experiments consultancy that's focused on conversion optimization, but it also is consistent with a principle from theory of advertising, which is that transparent and informative advertising is good because, again, it aligns the expectations. So your idea is not, or this approach's idea is not to oversell, but to sell what is true and quantify it and be specific about those benefits so that people can make informed decisions. And this is, again, very compatible with the function and the core purpose of marketing, which is about matching supply with demand. And to do that efficiently, we have to broker information. So we have to give that information about what the website content is so that people know already before if it is for them. And then if they decide that it's for them, it's interesting for them, then they click, and then you are likely to get higher conversion rate. But if you overpromise, the opposite will happen. Your conversion rate will be lower, and your cost will be higher. So that's why it is super, super important to align the expectations. And one tactic for it is to be very precise and informative in your marketing communications. Here's something that I think maybe violates this pattern, that is has very generic approaches, like using very terms like best data, industry leader, that are kind of suspicious use of language, and then don't have any information value. And so yeah, this has a lot of sketchy elements. But the thing is, with conversion optimization, for example, my assessment or anyone's assessment of this is just an opinion. So we would need to test, right? So the idea to improve is to test, and how we test is making improvements in the content and also in the functions of the page. So something you can make the form, for example, simpler, and remove the hype with more specific terms. But again, like I said, the challenging part often is that when you hear these recommendations from others, those might be based on their case. So primary data from your own experiments always trumps the the general wisdom, because when you see it from your own data, you understand it. And then there's also an interesting thing, which is the effect of culture on conversion rate optimization, because a lot of the content and the material that teaches conversion optimization is from the US, and American culture is very different. So in American culture, this kind of hype might be perceived differently. That people might be more open to it, whereas in Finland, people are generally more skeptical, and the culture is less about boasting and using this kind of superlative terms. So people might be more so maybe a lot of the stuff that you see about conversion optimization works in the US, but you have to think about cultural adaptability. Does it work in Finland or Germany or France, wherever you're doing the actions? So that's something just to keep in mind, that how does this work in my country? It's a question that you could think before you test different things. Also, authentic photography for conversion is kind of suggested in general, rather than using this stock photography. But that's again opinion that should be tested. Sometimes stock photo might work better, but sometimes it does create this, especially if you use international test photos. For example, I've got experiences in from a business case where we used photos like of foreign people, which came from the group. So the group asked us to use, then we use, and then we get from some customer get feedback, oh, you are a real company because these photos look so fake. So, it can, and those photos were considered by the group people as very good and very positive, and then Finnish people think that they are like fake. So again, cultural impact matters a lot when it comes to imagery, and we cannot expect that the same kind of imagery works, especially in international context. We really need to adapt and tailor it according to the markets. But yeah, sometimes over time, as you develop more knowledge and experience, I'm not saying that the intuition is useless. Often your intuition has value and your experience has values, but it's just that other people's experience, or especially, don't be too much relying on it. Form your own intuition and based on experience, and you can use it to formulate hypotheses and then test, see if something holds. So for example, we could have this situation where people think that certain landing page works better than the other, and it's just a case of then testing it. So rather than letting the rank of the person decide, like you have this hippo effect, which is the highest paid person in the room decides, that should be avoided when we talk about conversion optimization, because if always the manager decides, then we are not testing radically different options, and it's hard for us to improve. We just follow people's opinions when making decisions. It's kind of self-evident. But yeah, that's why we do often in conversion optimization, we do this A/B testing. And the standard way of doing it is to divide the traffic between control and some challenger version that we think is better. And then we go ahead and we do the change. If we use a tool like Website Optimizer, we might do it ourselves. In other cases, we might need IT to help us with it. And then we choose how long the experiment will be valid. So often it's good to keep it for a longer period, like so that little bit already novelty effect wears off and different types of people get exposed to it and so on. So running something for a week often is too short, in my opinion. But of course, there are other variables that affect the test duration, and it's not standard in all cases. But in small to medium sized business cases, I would urge it to be at least 3 weeks, so a longer period. So that you can see that also narrows down the number of tests we can do. So we might not always we might be very selective about what we test. And especially for smaller and medium websites, this example is from Firefox. They get millions of visitors, so they can test things like buttons very well. But then companies that have less traffic, can often, I would say, they have to do bigger changes because it takes a long time to run these tests and a lot of effort to plan them. So if you just test button colors, the overall magnitude of the improvement often is quite small, right? So, but the challenging thing is that this little bit breaks the correct theory of doing A/B tests, which is that you should only make one change and not any other changes at the same time, right? So that's to track that the effect that you observed is actually due to that change of the button color, for example. So it is a bit of a trade-off, but I still would recommend to small and medium-sized businesses that they actually go ahead and implement bigger changes, like radical versions of websites, because it is a trade-off of getting some kind of observing some kind of real improvement, and then the effort into designing that test. So yeah, and some things you can test in advertising are here. Some things you can test in the website are here. And in e-commerce, we often focus our tests around the basic, let's say, elements of the website, which are the product page. So the product page template that all products are using, we try to improve that. Then the category page, we try to improve that, which basically shows the products. And then the shopping cart, so the purchase process.
coffee person.
And the chat and no chat like service options, and then discount promotion campaigns.
Do you want to have coffee?
And yeah, and then in non-e-commerce websites, you would test other types of things. So basically, yeah, I mentioned earlier, you can use the intuition to formulate hypotheses for improvements. And also you can look at the industry best practices, what others have tested. So you can have this type of case studies often that are published about results. So those might be though kind of colored by consultancies, and often there's survivorship bias. That means if the test wasn't successful, they wouldn't report the results. So you have to be cautious when you interpret. And yeah, but in general, benchmarking what the best performing competitors are doing and then trying to mimic their approaches is, I think, a good idea. And then user analytics. So the pages that get the most traffic are again natural targets for improvement, how we can improve those. Can also view landing pages that have the most conversion revenue, and on the opposite side, we can focus on those that are the pages that have the highest exit rate, so people leaving. So maybe we want to improve those. And again, bounce rate is a similar idea. And then when we have a bunch of ideas, so we can brainstorm in the team and generate ideas for A/B testing, then it's important to prioritize them. And here is one framework for that. It's called the PI. So potential, importance, and ease. So basically, we can multiple team members can rate, and then we can calculate the average pi value, and the higher it is, the more likely. Basically, that's our opinion of a ranking. So that kind of test should be done first because it has the highest potential improvement, and it's relatively easy to incorporate. So that's what this composite score will tell you. Yeah. And then I already mentioned that we have sort of like a trade-off between a lot of the stuff, a lot of the advice and the ideas originate in conversion optimization originates from testing with big websites. So when you have a large website, the dynamics are very different compared to when you have small website. So here's just a simple calculation showing what is happening. What is happening with the small versus large website. So if we have these parameters of daily visitors, 100 versus 1 million, and the other variables are the same, then for the small website to generate a statistically significant result, it would take 2.6 years, whereas for the large website, 2.25 hours. So now you can see why bigger companies can do the button tests. They can accumulate data so much faster, and they can do more of these tests. But for smaller companies, it's really delicate what we can test and what we should test. So if we just do similar tests as the big companies, it will take us much longer to accumulate data, and often our results might be just non-significant because of our traffic being so much smaller. So you have to be very cautious of implementing
what tests to implement, especially because here in Finland we have a lot of small and medium-sized companies. So a lot of the case studies are presenting very big companies from the US that have a lot more traffic, and changing their button colors is a more common case there, let's say. So here are the guidelines for an A/B test, so you can peruse and read them, but basically this is the standard procedure that you would have. So goals and what you want to improve and what you want to change. Usually you should have a hypothesis, so you should have an expected result, a reasoning why you think the other version is better than the other. Sample size and the test duration, at least the test duration is important. Not always necessary to calculate the sample size in practical settings, but the test duration is very important to decide. And like I said, it's better to err for a longer period. There might have delayed effects there that don't immediately show up. So if just 1 week, after 1 week you're making a determination, it might be too soon, even when you might have statistical significance between the different versions you're testing. Then a tool, so you can implement A/B testing using a tool like Visual Website Optimizer, but you might also need IT help to implement. It depends on what type of tests are you exactly doing. And then, yeah, the variation and splitting the traffic, running the test and analyzing the result. And based on the winning version, you either implement the change or you keep the current version. And then you would just basically repeat this cycle for another test over and over again. And I already mentioned about how these tools like Visual Website Optimizer work. So they use the JavaScript, and then they do a lot of the background stuff automatically for you, including dividing the traffic and calculating the statistical significance. So there are some use cases where they work better. So for example, you can test different sales pages and make some UI changes through these tools. Let's say smaller magnitude changes are possible to implement something using Visual Website Optimizer as a marketer, especially if you know some basic HTML and CSS. But if you just edit text, you don't even need to know that once you have installed the tool. But generally, a real, let's say, industry scale A/B testing requires collaboration with software developers. You would have your IT people, and you would also need to have a good plan for this, because it is not easy to run and plan and report and then decide based on this A/B testing, which is why it's not often done. There are very few organizations that have in Finland that follow this A/B testing very well. You have those in bigger companies like Amazon and Google and so on that have really top talent to implement this technically, but also they have the culture of experimentation, which is often missing in smaller organizations, because smaller organizations don't gain so big benefits relative to the cost they put, because their scale of operation will be smaller, right? Google improves their revenue by 1 promille, that's already millions of euros. But if a Finnish company, a small company, improves by 1 promille, that's maybe 10 euros. So why would they spend a lot of time trying to get incremental lift? So yeah, I guess the point was, if you want to learn A/B testing and this kind of testing, you need to go abroad and work for Google or something like that. Yeah, so things to design or to decide in A/B testing, how long the test is going on, what are the variables, what is the experimental manipulation that you do, what is the outcome metric, are you interested in decreasing the bounce rate or increasing the conversion rate, or what is the outcome, how you split the traffic, whether you do it on the whole website or on some specific pages. You can configure it either way. And then how do you include participants? Is it all the traffic, or are you just selecting some segments of people to be included in the A/B testing? So these kind of variables you can decide and have sort of these afford a very flexible different ways of implementing A/B tests. A/B tests often don't yield straight improvements. So there's the funny idea, this kind of, yeah, again, the button thing. So, all I have to do is change my button color and my conversion rate will skyrocket. So it's like a very easy example to understand A/B testing, but it's really narrow because such improvements or such changes wouldn't generally be worthwhile. And yeah, there are also other challenges like most tests actually fail, but you never hear of them because people only report, the ones that worked. So there's a huge survivor bias, and also, yeah, the small changes, small improvements, and then even if you would show some improvement, it might not be automatically easy to implement the new version. Maybe it requires a lot of engineering work, and maybe even if you get statistically significant difference, people still think it's the real effect is not big enough to, for example, redesign the whole website or implement the completely whole design. So there are politics involved, and managers might block your ideas. So in reality, this actually knowledge about something doesn't automatically transfer into action in organizations because of politics. There are politics and opinions and egos involved, and who invented this, and that kind of sort of petty stuff that organizations often involve. So those can be challenging. Then some challenges are that if you choose to run the test for 3 weeks, you should run the testing for the whole 3 weeks and not keep peaking that every day. Are you now statistically significant? So this is called the p-value fishing, that you are, because it can fluctuate. Actually, you might have a significant result today, but then tomorrow it's no longer significant. The correct way of doing it is to determine the test duration and then let it run, and after that you make a determination if the result is significant or not. And yeah, the duration should be long enough to cover delayed effects. And another thing is that, the weak or no hypothesis. So think of the button color. Why should you think that this is better? Like, do you have some color theory, or, are you following some kind of robust idea when you're making this change? Because we could say that, okay, it's not green but blue. So okay, so now you have 25 different colors you could test. So why red? Like what is the idea? So you should have some kind of reasoning or logic. Often people think that, okay, what can we test, and not what kind of should we test based on some kind of theoretical idea of improving the performance. But this is an important part, that you would have some strong reason to believe that, okay, let's change this. It will work because the change will the reason, there's a reasoning here, a logical explanation why we would assume that it works. So if you have big enough changes and you are having a strong reason to believe that those versions are drastically different and the other one is much better because it is compatible with some theoretical idea, then that's a good setting. It's much better than a weak hypothesis. And yeah, I already mentioned about the survivorship bias. So we have be very cautious about this sort of industry because the case studies are good for inspiration, but again, they are just based on the ones that worked, and often they are published by consultancies that are doing this A/B testing, and it's cherry-picked results often. So yeah, be cautious in relying on such reports for your own decision making. Just consider them a sort of source of inspiration rather than a fact that, oh yeah, all buttons should be now red because in this case. So yeah, don't rely too much on the content, but more of the idea, and look at the explanation why did something work rather than the result necessarily. Yeah, I mentioned already that we have this problem of the highest paid person in the room. So this is a difficult challenge to tackle when you present data on an improvement and you still get a no. And this might be, you might struggle to understand it, but once you see it for the first time, then maybe you remember that I was talking about it because it really happens in the real world. You bring the data and still people are not buying. You need to get a buy-in for changes that improve the conversion requires more than just the result. And that's something, the more is the understanding of the organization, the and the other parts of selling the idea than just the experimental layer. This is very interesting. In some cases you want to improve things, but then for various reasons people are trying to block you, and this is not uncommon at all in real organizations. So if you want to be a true crusader and fighter for conversion rate, you'll find a way to cope and get those improvements done regardless of the opposition, basically whatever it takes. And then there's also this interesting case from Google, which is called the 41 Shades of Blue. So there was this engineer who quit Google, and he wrote this post about it, and he said that he's just tired of them testing like 41 different shades of blue color, and that's not inspiring. And so I was talking about small companies not having enough data to test small things, but then there's the opposite issue of big companies having too much data, so they test absolutely minuscule things. And this is not an isolated case. I've seen other engineers and people leaving companies like Google because of the lack of challenge and the difficulty of also their implementing stuff because of the rigorous management processes and so on. So many of them who might want to have real impact are changing to startups where the hierarchy is lower and they can do bigger changes and get bigger impact, because many of the people then looking for just comfortable position, but they actually want to use their high level skills to make a difference. So this is an interesting idea of testing something that might be not very consequential in the long run, putting a lot of effort into it. So A/B testing can go into two marginal and narrow direction as well. And then statistical significance, I mentioned it a couple of times. So you need to have enough of a sample size and prefix duration, and you look at the results. So it just means basically that the result is unlikely due to chance. Because this is important because a lot of the information that you interpret from analytics, I think I mentioned it last time, is based on very, very small samples. You look at 10 clicks and you say version A is better. You shouldn't say anything. You should say, I don't know, there's not enough data. So this is very important as a marketer to be able to distinguish between cases where you have enough data and not have enough data. Your manager will always ask you which one is better, and you can always give an answer, but that answer is not valid. Now here in the case of A/B testing, it's not valid unless there is a statistically significant difference, right? So two versions will always be different, but there's the idea that they might be it might be due to random chance. So that's basically why we want to use statistical testing. Here's a way to calculate it. These tools may help you also. They might have functionalities toward this end, but in case some of you are interested, here are the parameters that go into such calculation and example of how to calculate. Basically, the idea is that the bigger the change is, or the bigger the effect is, the less sample size you need, and the smaller the magnitude of the change, the more people you need to reach statistical significance. But this is not also the correct way of thinking reach statistical significance, because we are not running the test for 72 days. In all these cases, we would run it for like 14 days, but this is just a simulated idea that statistical significance is sort of connected with the duration and the sample size, like through the way it's calculated. And often we can use a confidence interval. So this is also a good way of understanding it. If we have very little data, the confidence interval, which is the interval where the true value likely is somewhere here between in this range, right? So the true real value. But the more data you get, the smaller this confidence interval becomes. So now we have much better estimation of where the true value actually is. So that's why we want to collect more data so that this confidence interval becomes smaller. Then there are also extensions of A/B tests, which are, for example, multivariate tests. And here we can test multiple changes at the same time, or multiple versions or from multiple variables. And we can create combinations of them, and then we can analyze which individual variations or which combinations of variations perform best. So this is more informative, but again, this requires bigger sample size. So these are harder for small sites to conduct this in smaller sites. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Then there were some tips on effective A/B tests, and you can peruse those. But with this, we are out of time. So thank you for attending, and see you guys on Friday.